Okay, let's picture this. It's August 1939, and two of the most bitter enemies imaginable, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, suddenly sign a peace deal. I mean, it's an alliance that seems to defy all logic. This wasn't just some political headline, though. This was the final green light for the Second World War. So you have to ask, how on earth did this unbelievable deal even happen? And why did it matter so much? Well, let's get into it.
All right, so here's our plan. We're going to start with a big puzzle, a deal with the devil, right? Then we'll look at why everyone was so shocked. After that, we'll dig into the cold, hard reasons for it all, a pact of convenience. Then we'll see how it started the countdown to war, and wrap up with why this whole thing mattered so much.
Right. First up, a deal with the devil? Let's dive right into the central puzzle here.
Yeah, this is the big one. How could two sworn ideological enemies sign a non-aggression pact? I mean, seriously. On one side, you've got Hitler's fascist, super anti-communist Germany, and on the other, you've got Stalin's communist Soviet Union. These guys weren't just rivals. Their entire worldviews were based on destroying the other. So how in the world did they end up shaking hands?
Okay, so let's get into the case for shock. To really get why this was such a bombshell, you have to understand why, for pretty much everyone at the time, this alliance was completely unthinkable. It shouldn't have happened.
So why was everyone so surprised? Well, first off, fascism and communism were polar opposites. They were mortal enemies. And it wasn't just theory. Hitler literally wrote in his book Mein Kampf that his life's mission was to destroy the Soviet Union. Plus, Nazi ideology saw Slavs, the people of the Soviet Union, as Untermenschen. That means subhuman. And this wasn't just talk. Hitler had already signed an anti-Comintern pact, an alliance against communism. They even fought each other indirectly in the Spanish Civil War. The hatred was real.
So from the outside looking in, this pact looked like it betrayed everything both leaders supposedly stood for. It just made absolutely no sense, right? Well, maybe not. And this is where things get interesting. Because underneath all that ideology was just cold, hard calculation. This is what we call realpolitik. Politics based on what's practical, not what's right or wrong. This wasn't about friendship. This was a pact of pure, ruthless convenience. You can see it right here. This was a total marriage of convenience. Let's look at Hitler's side. He wanted to invade Poland to get what he called Lebensraum, or living space for Germany. But the one thing he couldn't risk was a two-front war, fighting Britain and France in the west and the Soviets in the east. This deal, it took the Soviets off the table. Now for Stalin. His army was weak, he knew it, and he was terrified of a German attack. This pact bought him time, precious time to rearm. And this is huge, a secret part of the deal gave him a whole sphere of influence in Eastern Europe, basically carving up Poland between them.
But wait, you might be thinking, why didn't Stalin just team up with Britain and France? The simple answer, he didn't trust them one bit. Think about it. He was totally left out of the Munich Agreement in 1938, where they basically just gave Hitler what he wanted. He thought Britain and France were weak, that they'd never actually stand up to Hitler. Even worse, he was paranoid that they were secretly hoping Hitler would attack the Soviet Union, to let the two dictatorships destroy each other. So for Stalin, a deal with the devil seemed safer than a deal with so-called friends you couldn't trust. So, ideology gets tossed aside for pure pragmatism. The pact is signed. And just like that, the countdown to war begins. This was it, the final green light. And here's the absolute key point. This pact removed the last major obstacle for Hitler. With the Soviet Union on the sidelines, he thought he had a free hand to invade Poland. He was betting that Britain and France would just back down again. He was wrong, of course, but the pact gave him the confidence he needed to make that final, fatal move. And just look how fast everything unravels after this. August 23rd, the pact is signed. 2 days later, Britain and Poland make their own military alliance official, basically a direct warning to Hitler. He doesn't care. September 1st, just over a week after the pact, Germany invades Poland. Then, on September 3rd, Britain and France finally make good on their promise and declare war on Germany. And then, on September 17th, the Soviets invade Poland from the other side, just like they secretly agreed to. The Second World War had begun. And that pact between Britain and Poland is so important. It was the moment the policy of appeasement officially died. Britain had drawn a line in the sand. They guaranteed they would defend Poland. So when Hitler's tanks rolled across that border, Britain and France had no choice. They had to declare war.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. This is the really crucial part, especially if you're studying this period.
Why did this pact actually matter so much? What was the ultimate consequence? When you boil it all down, the pact showed that international cooperation was dead. The whole idea of collective security, the countries would stand together against an aggressor, that promise was totally broken. Instead, it was every nation for itself, a world of pure, naked self-interest. And that massive level of distrust, it would cast a shadow for decades to come. And if you need any more proof of just how calculated this all was, just listen to Stalin himself. He later said, "We secured peace for our country for 18 months, which enabled us to make military preparations." See, it wasn't about friendship or ideology, it was just about buying time. And really, this sums it all up perfectly. For Hitler, the pact was just a temporary convenience to get what he wanted. For Stalin, it was a desperate gamble to buy himself more time. But for Poland, caught right in the middle, it was a death sentence. Which leaves us with one last, really chilling question to think about. Stalin bought himself 18 months of peace. But at what cost? He got his time, sure, but he also helped kickstart the single deadliest conflict in all of human history. It might have been a clever, cynical move at the time, but the price for that cleverness was absolutely devastating.